Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. When I was growing up, I played a lot of games. And some of the games I played, I never got around to finishing for one reason or another. So that's what I want to talk about on today's episode. 5 games that I played back in the day, but I never beat. Roll that intro. So before anybody freaks out, I'm warning you right now, there's probably a game on this list that you can't believe I haven't beaten yet. But cut me some slack. When you're a young kid growing up, life is hectic. You have school, chores, sports, girls, holidays at different people's houses, anything and everything to distract you from beating a game. Some of these games either didn't have a password, some were brutally tough, and some I just never went back for one reason or another. So I never completed them. These won't be in any kind of order, just the random 5 games I need to go back and finish. So let's get into the list.
Number 5, Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2 for the NES. I used to play this game all the time at my cousin Justin's house. It's a platforming action-adventure game for the NES. The game was published by Acclaim and released in North America in December 1989. I remember his mom would babysit me back in the day, and me and him would play this non-stop. But we could only get so far before we became stuck and eventually gave up and went on to easier games. In Iron Sword, the player controls the Night Warrior, Kuros, as he ventures into the land of Sindarin. I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, he must defeat the evil wizard, Malkil, who controls the 4 elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. Kuros must collect the parts and assemble the legendary Iron Sword in order to defeat Malkil, who resides at the top of Icefire Mountain. You control Kuros and travel the land using your sword and magic spells to reach the 4 elemental bosses. The control is decent in this game, but I think it's kinda silly that you can die from falling too far. I don't know. I just think it's a cheap way of making the game longer. I mean, you're in a well-protected metal suit. I think you could handle a fall. Regardless, you battle through 4 domains, each with a golden artifact that you must pick up and deliver to the domain's Animal King before the second area of the domain is opened. This game did have a password system, but honestly, I could never get past the second domain, so I never finished it unfortunately. I want to, but I gotta finish this list first. Number 4, Abbadocks for the NES. I used to play this game at Max's house, who was my dad's buddy. We would go over there to visit, and him and my dad would go in the other room to smoke some, and Max would always let me play his Nintendo. So I would try Abbadocks. I got pretty far into the game, but I could never beat it. I remember going back over there all the time and would dig through this pile of NES games till I found it and popped it in. I'd do my best to beat it before it was time to leave. One day, I went over there and his Nintendo and all his games were gone. He had upgraded to the Genesis, which at the time was new and exciting, so I totally forgot about beating Abbadocks. So to this day, I've never finished it. It's a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, kinda like Gradius or R-Type. Some people say it's like Life Force, but with a pretty simple concept. Just kill everything on the screen. But that's tough to do when it's a one-hit death type of game, which honestly, I'm not a fan of. But if you plan to master the game, you can't take deaths. It's that simple. This game is fun, but it's pretty difficult also. I never beat the stage boss, this huge giant alien with an eyeball growing out of his chest. I never got around to beating it, but I'm going to beat it this summer. I plan on doing it for the first time ever. Number 3, Comix Zone for the Sega Genesis. Way back in August 1995, I used to hang out with my buddy Nick. Now I liked Nick, but he was always getting into some mischief, and somehow I was always getting drug into it. But one awesome thing that he had that nobody else had, and one of the main reasons I liked spending the night at his house, was a little thing called the Sega Channel. It was a service that you would buy through your cable company, and it would allow you to play upcoming Genesis games for 15 minutes at a time before it reset the game and kicked you out from the lobby. So you could choose another game or wait in the queue for the same game to replay it. It was awesome. Anyways, I remember playing that, but would never be able to get far into it before the time ran out. It's an action platformer where you play as a guy named Sketch, who you control and guide him through pages in a comic book to try and reach the ending before you die by your own creation. It's a pretty unique concept. Each level has 2 pages, but they are pretty long. The game is actually pretty tough. You have to use your brain to figure out what items you need to beat the puzzles that lie ahead and hold your progress while you're trying to get through the pages. I remember playing it with a 3-button Genesis controller and having to cycle the items with the C button. I hated that. If you have a 6-button, I definitely recommend using that instead because of the XYZ. Each button is for a separate item, which makes navigation extremely easy. The game stuck out for me at the time because it was different, and haven't really even seen another game like it since, and that's why it's number 3 on my list. Number 2, Cyborg Justice for the Sega Genesis. Back in the day, me and my Uncle Marty would play this game all the time. We never owned it, but we rented it a ton. At a certain point in the game, the robots become literally unbeatable. You play as a cyborg who is basically fighting other cyborgs, kind of like the movie Real Steel. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up with cyborgs. Sounds awesome. It really is fun. When you beat a cyborg, you can take his weapons and attach them onto your cyborg to use. But I remember getting to a point where we couldn't even beat one of the cyborgs, even when we was double teaming it. So like other games on the list, we just moved on and never went back to it. Even when I was capturing footage for this video, the game was tough, especially single player. So this is definitely one that I want to revisit this year, beat it, and put it behind me. Number 1, Super Smash TV for the Super Nintendo. The number 1 game on this list makes my blood boil. Me and my uncle used to play it all the time, trying to beat it in the early 90s on the Super Nintendo. The game is basically a game show set in 1999, and you're a contestant playing for cash and prizes. It kind of reminds me of the old school 1990s Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, The Running Man. You basically are thrown into a gauntlet with tons of enemies coming at you from every angle. You have to kill them before you're allowed to move on to the next area. After each area is cleared, you meet the stage boss. This game takes an insane amount of teamwork to beat. You literally can't make a mistake. You and your partner have to be on point non-stop. Unfortunately, we never beat this one. We got really far into it, but with all the other good games for the Super Nintendo coming out, we moved on to other co-op games to play. But this game is really fun, and I want to tackle it again soon. After 25 years, I want to put it behind me. I know you're watching, bro. I call Marty bro, by the way. I know you're watching, so get those fingers ready, because we're going to beat this game this winter.
Well, there you have it. 5 games that I still need to go back and beat. So if you have any games from your childhood that for one reason or another you never got around to beating, write it down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep it retro.